Welcome back into Buccaneers Total Access. First half of the show, we had head coach Todd Bowles. Now I am so excited to have Keith Tandy here with us, who player extraordinaire for so many years. Everybody knows you as a Bucs player. Now you are an assistant special teams coach and helps out with the secondary. But you just got you were able to find this awesome niche when you got here, and it's just so great to still have you back in the Bucs organization, and great to have you on the show.
It's great to be back, and really just great to be a part of just like the transition from when I played to coaching now.
Yeah, it's a big deal. I mean, it's not a given that any player can become a coach. That we've talked a lot about how it takes certain things, and I know later in the show we'll get a bit more into your transition into that role and your story. But for now, we got to talk about that just epic win in LA the other night. And what did this win mean to the team in your mind, of just where we'd gone from right before the bye week to now what we've been able to do? And of course, looking at the schedule, this was the team that had the best record in this home stretch. So to beat this team, to have this many in a row, to be sitting where we are with the division, what has this meant to the team?
I think it's more so just like the type of opponent. Like Harbaugh, he prides himself on being a physical team. We pride ourselves on being a physical team. And then making that West Coast trip, you got all the excuses built in. And just for us to play the way we did, and we still haven't played a full 4 quarters yet. So we've been preaching that. We've done a good job of starting fast and finish fast, but in the middle, we're still working on putting together. But it was real good to see the way we played and see the things we're capable of, and hoping we can carry that throughout the rest of the season.
Yeah, and I mean, the Chargers scored on their first 3 possessions, and that was it. Just lockdown, 0 points after that. And I know, again, you played on the defense in your career. Watching this, were they doing well early offensively, and then what were we able to adjust to suddenly be able to just shut it down?
Well, I don't pay too much attention, like what's going on X and O wise on defense, because my main role on game day is special teams. So I'm just listening to the other coaches, but trying to make sure the guys are ready for the next special teams play. So honestly, haven't watched the game yet, offense or defense.
Mm-hmm.
I've been on to Dallas as soon as I came in the building this morning. So honestly, I couldn't tell you.
Yeah, that's totally fair. But I mean, I know that for you, just looking at when you played, to be able to do that kind of an adjustment, what does that say about a defense and even a coach as well, to know that you can take an offense that is so powerful and can do so much to you, and to be able to make that kind of a shift mid-game? How challenging is that to do?
It's very challenging, but I think it just shows the maturity we have, the leadership we have on the coaching staff and with the players. We were able to make those in-game adjustments where you see something on film like, okay, I think this will work, but then it's not exactly what you saw. So then you come to the sideline, talk about it. And that's one thing I do here. Like, we get to the sideline, I see the DB coaches talking to the DBs. I see Foot over there talking about every single detail with those linebackers. And then for them to go back out on the field and just execute it, like, that's a pretty good feeling.
Yeah, that's a huge deal. And I mean, man, they didn't convert a single 3rd or 4th down.
Wow.
They held them to 0 of 6 and 0 of 2. I mean, that's such a rare thing for a defense to accomplish. And then I know also, just since the bye week, they've allowed the fewest points per game in the NFL. To see what they've been, and knowing how many injuries, I mean, they've just been working with this patchwork thing of pulling guys off waiver wires and guys off the Lions practice squad coming back here. And just, you played in the secondary, to have that many people change, have that much going on in the secondary, and then to be able to have those kind of numbers of, hey, we're not converting a single 3rd down or 4th down, allowing the fewest points since the bye week in the league. How wild is that?
It's impressive. And like right now, like, you're educating me, because like for the most part, I stick with special teams. When they need help on the field, I'm involved with defense, but you're telling me things I didn't realize. Like, I'm so locked in on my job, but it doesn't surprise me. Like, from training camp, really from OTAs, it just felt a little different. Like, we felt like we were deep. We were young, so we knew there would be growing pains, but we weren't deep. Like, we still got safeties on practice squad I'm excited to see. Marcus Banks and Rashad Wisdom, like, just the depth, the front office, the things they've been doing, just bringing guys in off the streets, and then the coaches just coaching them up, getting them up to count, ready to play.
It's a big deal. We're talking to Keith Tandy here. Let's talk about your guy Levante, that we know, first of all, you were drafted the same year as Levante. So put into perspective also how incredible it is that now here he is, 34, doing the things that he's doing, that you can remember all the way back to when you guys came into the league together.
First of all, it doesn't surprise me. Just the way he's carried himself since he came in. He was a pro's pro from day one. He just always made things look very effortless. Like, it felt like he wasn't playing hard, almost like we were conditioning and stuff, because he just made it look so easy. He doesn't sweat. I don't know how you can, born and raised in Florida and doesn't sweat. He can have a gray hoodie on at practice and it won't be an ounce of water on it.
That's wild.
But he doesn't waste any movement, so I knew like his game would translate where he could play a while. He didn't rely on elite athleticism, even though he is a great athlete. But it wasn't like, oh, he's this twitchy guy. He's just see ball, get ball. He just understands football. It's hard to explain, but he understands angles and leverage and feel and numbers and all of that stuff. And I don't know how he does it.
What has he meant to the team over the years, and how have you maybe even seen the way he leads grow, evolve, change? We know he's not the most vocal guy. So what do you remember about early Lavonte and then into now of just the role he's played from not just the X's and O's, but the off the field and the leadership standpoint?
So early Levante, he was always just a lead by example guy. Didn't say much. I couldn't get him to go out with me. Like I went to West Virginia, so I like to go out, but I couldn't get him to go out with me. And he didn't say much in the locker rooms. He would just play the games with us, but he was a very much lead by example guy. He gonna be early to every meeting, early to the weight room. But now, like, if you could see him, like, in the locker room, like, him giving pregame speeches, like, sometimes my eyes start to water up, and I'm like, oh, shoot. Like, Levante up there.
There's some dust in here.
But no, it's been impressive just to see his growth. Like, that's, like, me going from a player, like, coming into the league with him now, technically I coach him. Like, it's impressive, like, seeing the growth of him. And more so, like, the leadership, the talking, the bringing guys along, and all of that stuff. Like, I remember going back in the day, Deshaun Goldson and Darrelle Revis telling him to slow down at practice because he was practicing too hard. Like, slow down. Like, you got to take care of your body. But now just seeing the way he's matured and taking care of his body off the field and all that stuff, like, it's very impressive.
That's pretty incredible. And, yeah, so he now became the 8th player since 1991 to have at least 40 sacks and 30 takeaways. That is a wild stat. And then he had a sack and a half in this game. Seemed like maybe it should have been 2, where there's some debate I've heard among the coaches of who should have gotten credit for that other half. Now, this also is his most sacks in a season since 2016. As we talk about the turning back the clock, the taking care of the body, like sacks from his position and being able to have as many this year as he did all the way back in 2016, what does that tell you about him?
It's impressive, man. He's still growing, like learning every year. He's always like picking guys' brains and just trying to find something else to add to his game. It does not surprise me. Like anything he does not surprise me. Like he's just been like the ultimate pro from day one. He's been a constant learner. He knows how to analyze himself, see what he can work on to get better, and like it does not surprise me.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. And Jamel Dean got his interception in the game, also snapped. Justin Herbert had the 5th longest streak going in NFL history of passes thrown without an INT. He only had the 1 earlier this year. Tell me what you saw from that play while you were out there watching.
I just saw a ball go up in the air. It looked like one of my plays, like it was a punt. So I'm just like, please come down with it, somebody. Then I saw Dean tracking it, him and the receiver. I saw both of them stumble, then he just fell in his lap. And yes, the sideline, like everybody loves Dean. So the sideline erupted, everybody slapping him on the head, on the back, congratulating him, but then trying to get the guys locked back in for the next play.
That's awesome. I love that. And also, I mean, man, from the offensive side, we get Baker, Mike, Jalen McMillan, but especially just for you, you've known Mike a really long time at this point, watched him basically his whole career. How wild is it that there are still games like this that it feels like he can somehow still impress us and surprise us after everything he's done? That's
impressive. But once again, like same type of guy as Levante. He doesn't want the spotlight. You don't see the work that he puts in, but like I've seen the growth and maturity he has taking care of his body, just like Levante, like dealing with injuries, but he knows how to play through injuries. He knows how to take care of his body, whether it's getting back from the injuries or whether it's getting more healthy in the off season so he can last a full season. But once again, Mike, like first ballot Hall of Famer, like it doesn't surprise me when he can take over a game, and it's still impressive. What year? 11, 12?
Something like that, yeah. It's been a lot. Yeah, and I know also, like, I saw the play where he kind of batted down the ball to make sure there was no interception happening on one play. And I was just thinking about all the things that he does that even is aside from how incredible he can be from a pass catching standpoint. And same thing of his leadership, that he's not a typical wide receiver in a lot of the different stereotypical ways. And so I think about him and Levante being guys who they've never been divas. They've never been guys who've needed attention. How have you seen that influence a locker room over this last decade plus when you have two of your best guys having that kind of a mindset?
It's big, and I mean, because you can just when you're trying to coach guys or develop guys, you can just point to those too. Like, you want to play for a long time, you want to play at a high level, you want to stay in one place, you want to make a ton of money, you want to win Super Bowl. Like, you got two perfect examples for that, and you don't get more selfless than those two guys. Like, because Mike Evans, you can throw him the ball 20 times a game and nothing would be wrong with that.
Yeah.
But him, if it's just taking the top off of coverage, opening it up for somebody else, he'll do it. If he has to block a screen pass for somebody else, he'll do it. You see him on the edge. So we talking about our running game this year. While I see him out there blocking, getting those extra 10, 15 yards that comes from receivers, putting their face in there and getting that block. So everything he gets, he deserves it. And that's another one. Eyes get kind of watery when I'm watching him too.
That's great. I love that. And I know punting got a bit of a break this game for the team. Is there almost a part of you guys that when you work so hard on planning and preparing for the punt stuff and then it just doesn't happen, that you're like, it's a great reason it's not happening, but then you're like, man, we prepared so much for this and then it's just not happening?
Not at all.
Yeah, you're like, great.
Not at all. I'm never complaining about not punting. So
That's great. What stood out to you about for you guys, just the special teams units? Knowing punting wasn't a very active one, but kicking off ended up thankfully happening a whole lot of times. What did you guys see from your units?
So they play with a ton of energy. Like, we got a lot of great guys, a lot of young guys, and just when they get that many reps in one game, you can see them, like, every rep, their confidence grows. They start believing in themselves more. Their technique grows. And they were just exciting the sideline. Like, you see guys like, oh, I bet Vi gonna get this one. I bet JJ gonna get this one. And then you can see the guys, like, feeding off that energy. And I think that plays a role in our defense, too, because then all of a sudden we go down and make a tackle 25-yard line. We all coming off the field, they slapping heads or whatever, clapping hands when they going by each other. Now the defense excited, like, oh, this young guy put in all this work, now he making plays. So it just excited the whole sideline and not complaining about not having any fun plays.
Yep, that's awesome. All right, we're going to take a quick break here on Buccaneers Total Access, brought to you by Advent Health. This is Buccaneers Radio. Welcome back into Buccaneers Total Access, brought to you by Advent Health. I have Keith Tandy here with me. I know that, again, mainly you're working on a lot of the coverage units and kick and punt units, but how much have you learned even about the kicking game since you've taken on this new job in terms of your punter and your kicker?
A ton.
Yeah.
Like, it's impressive how much goes into that, and you never realize that whenever you're playing. It's like, hey, man, just kick the ball over there in the corner. I'll go make the tackle. But, like, it's a lot, and just the smallest detail can make a huge thing, whether it's the direction of the kick and then paying attention to the weather. Like, I'm like, okay, it's Tampa, it's hot, it's humid, like, let's go play. But I never realized how windy it was, like, in Tampa, how much that affects the kicking game. Yeah,
that's crazy. So tell me about how you guys have worked through, I mean, how complicated it's been having 3 different punters, which also means 3 different holders, and the chemistry between your holder, your kicker, your long snapper, all of that, and the way that it has been an interesting challenge and learning thing for you in this role.
So first, you just gotta, you can't take what Chase is doing for granted. Like, he's the ultimate pro. Anytime we make a change, he doesn't flinch. He's bringing those guys along, coaching them up, whether it's telling them, okay, this is how I like the ball, or this is what I've seen help other guys out, and just little things, like little details that when you got a guy who's had that much success as he has, and he's teaching the younger guys, so once again, it's easy. Like, I put him right along the same line as Levante and Mike. Like, you don't hear much about him except when he's hitting a field goal or whatever, but he's always coaching guys. He's always bringing them along, and he's that same lead by example type. So he's a guy you can just point to him, like, just watch what Chase does.
Yeah.
And he makes your job that much easier.
Yeah, and I mean, man, the effect he's had on the offense too, of knowing how you don't have to get nearly as far down the field to feel pretty good about that. So the big story this offseason was the new kickoff rules. So tell me what your reaction was initially when you heard that rule was going to get put in place.
Initially, I was just kind of wanted to just kind of do some research and figure out what's it going to all be about. A lot of times, we don't really like change as special teams coaches. We know what we know, but it's been fun just learning more about it and then just doing all the research. And, like, one thing I do every week, I go through every single kickoff return play to see what's going on around the league. And you just got to, like, anytime you watch the film, because it's new, just kind of have, like, an empty mind, a blank canvas, and just see what you can learn and what can you implement without trying to make a wholesale change in the middle of the season. But it's been exciting. It's made it more like a defensive play Like it's really like the first play of defense on kickoff. If you kickoff return, it's the first play of offense. So you've got guys who might not normally have a role. Now their role is pretty important for him. Like Sean Tucker, we never thought about him being a kickoff returner, and now I think he's one of the best ones in the league at it. So something like that where we never really thought about it last year with the old kickoff rule, but now it's like, okay, Sean, this is just inside zone. Sean, this is just power O. This is just a gap scheme. So
that's really interesting. How have you seen the different returners do this year, both punt and kick?
So you saying different returners on our team throughout the league. So we had some success, special kickoff return, and I think now some teams are kicking the ball away from us, especially Sean. But we just trying to make sure we're ready whenever we get that chance, because usually about one time a game, no matter who's the kicker is, he'll miss it one and give you a chance. And if you're not careful, you can catch yourself like going to sleep, and that's when all those, because there's a lot of new rules that if you're not locked in, you'll miss out on them. Whether it's the touchback to the 20 if the ball hits the ground and then go into the end zone, and you actually have to down the ball if it goes in the end zone versus being dead completely. So different things like that. And then Trey's done a good job. He's been really good catching it. Really good with the other guys, coaching them up, because we've had different guys back there too, because Trey, he missed a couple games, so he's been really good for the group, doing a lot of things you don't really see. So I'm excited about the group and excited to finish the season with them.
Yeah, and I know I feel like for a lot of fans, we thought that the new rule was going to result in more like explosive returns and plays. Does it feel like it's done what you guys expected it to do or not? How has the impact been felt within the team?
I think initially I thought it was going to be more explosive returns too. Like, to me, it looked like it was going to be okay. It's basically cover zero. Everybody's on the same level, and they're already at the 40-yard line. So, like, if you get through one level, then you're like, oh, there's nobody else there besides the kicker. So I was thinking it was going to be more returns. But then once we started looking at I think it was XFL or USFL, whichever one had the rule, it was less, depending on what you determine an explosive, it was less touchdowns, but it was more like 30 to 40-yard returns than the old rule.
Interesting.
And I think that's, like, you already got more guys down there so you can get through that first wave, but it's not as big of, I think, a separation between that first wave and second wave, where in the past, if you had a Zion McCullum running next to a Cole Keith, it's going to be 15 yards of space in between them. But now it's just kind of like 5 yards of space, so it's easier to fill those gaps.
Interesting. We're talking to Keith Tandy. When you played, if you had heard about this rule, what would you have thought as a player?
Well, I was a special teams guy, so I'd have been all for it. Like, if we bring more special teams plays back into the game, so I'd have been all for it, excited for it, and it would have took a while to figure out exactly what my role was. I was always kind of like a second-level guy. I wasn't the fastest guy down the field, but now it's kind of hard to be that second-level guy where you can read and react. So that would have been interesting, just figuring out, learning how to play a little bit better with my hands, read those returns a little faster.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering is, after we heard about the new rule, one of the first thoughts was, how does this change the type of player you're going to need? Because special teams can be a huge thing that contributes to who makes the final roster, that you have your superstars on each side of the ball, and then a lot of times after that you might decide this guy or that guy based on how much they can contribute to special teams. So when this new rule kicked in, how much did it change potentially who some of those guys would be, or the makeup of guys, or maybe even who you were looking at with drafting and undrafted free agents of what they could contribute for y'all?
So it definitely played a role, but we didn't have like a ton of data to pull from. So it was more so like us trying to make it fit our personnel. And I think it fit our personnel pretty good. We got all these outside linebackers, long arms. So the old kickoff rule, you can run around blocks. But now it's harder to run around a block because the ball is already closer to the block. So we were thinking you have to play better with your hands. Well, we got the perfect guys for that. All these outside linebackers used to escaping, getting off blocks, whether it's Anthony Nelson, the Joe Tryons, the Yayas, all those guys, like, they're perfect for that. And then you want guys who physical enough that can like squeeze and restrict to make it more condensed like a defensive play versus being spread out from sideline to sideline. So we think it fits our personnel pretty good, but we're continuing to learn every day from it. And
then how do you feel like getting special teams players to buy in? Is that challenging, or knowing that everyone wants to be contributing on offense and defense, that's everyone's goal, and that special teams, is it ever a struggle to get guys to care as much about that as their offensive and defensive assignments? Or what are the ways that you as a player felt like you were able to buy in, and then now as a coach to get guys excited about that role?
So I think initially you think that, but one thing our front office has done, Bray brought in a lot of just great guys. And a lot of guys who just love playing ball. And so that's one thing me and Coach McGahee try to do is just, man, if you like ball, like it's another play just to play ball. But then also, too, for those young guys, it's the way to get you developed, and it can buy you time until you get ready to play offense or defense. And then really just trying to, like, whether it's just pulling stats or just showing the importance of it. But the more I feel like personally I can make it relate to offense or defense, then the more the players feel like, okay, well, this is something I can use. So it might be a receiver playing front line to kickoff return. I'm like, this is nothing different than a single block at receiver. If you got to block or stock block at receiver. And so just trying to teach them, look, it's the same exact technique. We just got to get there a different way.
I know that for a lot of fans, special teams is definitely the area that maybe they pay attention to the least. Maybe this is when they take their bathroom break. They miss kickoffs or punt returns sometimes. Who are some of the guys that you want people to know have been the unsung heroes or have really contributed in big ways that fans may just not always recognize in that area?
So like I keep repeating, we got a great group of guys. The guys they'll probably notice if they pay attention on our team on special teams, I would say J.J. Russell, Ryan Miller, Josh Hayes, all high-level players on special teams. But then guys who do a lot of the dirty work, don't get credit, are always making tackles. A guy like Cole Keith, he might be out there blocking 3 or 4 guys one play, and you'll never know unless you pull up the tape. And even if you pull the tape up, you might not notice if you just glance through it. But so those 4 guys, we got a ton of young guys who growing every day. I think Funderburk might have got his first tackle yesterday. Like Ryan Neal hopped in, didn't miss a beat, but his career was a lot like mine, Ryan Neal's, where he's been a special teams guy, got a little chance to play on defense, and now he's back on special teams. So I love talking. Actually, I played with him in Atlanta for a year, so I love just talking to him and talking to the new rules and stuff about kickoff.
That's pretty cool. And how about Jack Browning, how he's been able to do now since stepping in as a punter, and what the qualities are that you guys have been looking for in a punter this year?
So a talented guy, and then every time he goes out there on the field and gets another hit on the ball, you can see what we see in practice starting to come. And he's growing every day. He has a strong leg. He has a great attitude, good athlete. So we're excited to see what he can do for the rest of the season.
All right, we're going to take one more break here on Buccaneers Total Access, brought to you by Advent Health. We're talking to Keith Tandy. This is Buccaneers Radio. Welcome back into our final segment here on Buccaneers Total Access, brought to you by Advent Health. We're talking to Keith Tandy. Tell us a little bit about that journey for you of going from player to coach and how you got that opportunity and what you think it was that coaches and people saw in you to say that you would make a good coach.
So the journey, while I was playing, I always had a lot of coaches. They would just tell me, I think you'll make a good coach whenever you're finished. But in my head, I'm like, I'm playing for a long time, not really thinking about that. And then like when I went so I did 6 years here, then I got cut, went to Atlanta that 7th year, and then I was inactive for a couple of games. And when I was inactive, I was on the sideline just like coaching young guys up, and I kind of got more joy out of that than when I was playing, making them play myself. And so Keith Armstrong was a special teams coordinator in Atlanta. In 2018, the year I played there. 2019, I was still trying to play. Nobody ever called. I started volunteering at a high school coaching and just fell more in love with it. So then I reached out to probably 40 or 50 former coaches I played for. Keith Armstrong was one. He was actually back in Tampa in 2019. I reached out to Jason, GM. He picked up the phone, kind of surprised. I'm like, oh, the GM picked up the phone. Like,
I was ready to leave a voicemail.
For real, like literally. And so we talked 20 or 30 minutes, and he just told me you can find good coaches anywhere. Like, if I don't find anything soon, I can come back to Tampa and just like volunteer in the summer or something like that if I wanted to have access. And I'm like, oh, then I had a long conversation. Mike Smith, he had just finished coaching. Talked to him for about 3 hours. I talked to Greg Schiano for about 2 hours. And those guys all just gave me a ton of advice. And so the stuff they told me, I just tried to put it in action, put it in motion. Next thing I know, I'm at West Virginia for 2 months, right before COVID, about to start GAN. Or I don't know what I was about to do, but I was up there volunteering.
I was going to do something.
I was going to do something up there. They had a GA spot coming open, and I think analyst spot coming open over the summer. But then Keith Armstrong called me. He was in Tampa, and he was like, we want to interview you here. So I'm like, oh, shoot. So I came back ready for an interview, and BA was like, do you want the job or no? And I was like, yeah. And that was how I got started.
That's awesome. What do you feel like have been your favorite moments as a coach, or even the ways that you've grown as a coach since starting it about 4 years ago now?
The favorite moment is definitely just seeing the players grow. Like, you can kind of see when the light switch the light bulb hits in their head, and it's like no better feeling as a coach. Like, okay, like he finally gets it. Now let's see if he can put it together, like in the game. And then sometimes they'll struggle at first. Sometimes guys get it, but really just like the patience. The patience as a coach, just knowing that everybody's not going to learn it the same way I learned it. Everybody's not going to learn at the same speed. I kind of look at it like popcorn kernels popping. Like, you put them in the same microwave, the same temperature, they don't all pop at the same time. So just try to keep giving them what they need and finding different ways, getting creative sometimes. If I think a guy can play harder, I might go and pull up his 40 from at the combine. I might have a video. I might slide that video into our presentation. Just, this is what I need from you right here. So just trying to get creative as possible. And like you were talking about earlier, just trying to find different ways to just keep these guys motivated about special teams, show them the importance of it. And it's exciting, man. Like, I think every young coach should start on special teams. You get a chance to deal with like pretty much every position, because the O linemen, they're on your field goal team. The D linemen, starting D linemen on your field goal block team. I work with Kyle Trask, he's the backup holder. So for the most part, work with everybody besides Baker. So
he's about the only one that gets off scot-free here.
I'm gonna have Mike Evans, Chris Godwin on my hands team. So you get a chance to work with it. You learn a lot of different techniques. You learn a little about pass protecting, whether it's punt protecting or field goals. You learn a little bit about O-line. You learn about running the ball. We were talking about kickoff return earlier. So I learned a little bit about running back techniques. And then you got to be able to tackle. So you learn in defensive terms and defensive schemes and stuff. So it teaches you a little bit about everything. And also you learn like situational football. A lot of situations I didn't realize as a player come up, and a lot of times the special teams coaches just got to know it and not necessarily have the players worried about it. You just tell them one or two key words, and then it triggers something in their head. We're
talking to Keith Tandy, and yeah, the onside kick has been interesting this year too. The slight changes with that. Tell us how challenging it is to perform an onside kick successfully.
Very challenging. What's the percentage?
It's very low.
Yeah, was it like 11 or something? I don't even know what it is now, but it's very challenging. You kind of just, I mean, everybody got a different philosophy what they want to do with it, but I do miss the surprise onside kick. Take that out of it. And then also, you don't realize the alignment rules are different with the onside kick versus the regular kickoff return. And like sometimes as a coach, I'd be like, it's the same as the old rules. Well, if you got a rookie, he don't know the old rules, so he have no idea what I'm talking about. So I think things like that make you speak more clearly as a coach and make sure you don't take anything for granted.
And then I know it's also just interesting to think about what scouting is like for special teams and game prep as we go into this next week with Sunday Night Football and going against the Cowboys. First of all, I know that their special teams coach, Coach Fossil's a pretty well-known special teams guy from around the league for a lot of years. What is the difference for you of learning from what game prep was like for you as a player, especially defensively versus special teams, and then now as a coach, of what are the things you guys are looking at and watching and how you get guys ready for a game?
First, the hours. I knew coaches put in some time, and they give you like a ton of tips and stuff, but they have to really look at everything. But then like, okay, what's the most important? What's something new that we haven't hit in a couple of weeks? And you got to find a way it's presented to the players where you present everything to them, but you don't present everything to them. Like, I'm not quite sure if that makes sense, because they have to be ready for everything, but you can't show them everything, obviously. So just figuring out what's the important things, what do we do well against them, and it is a little bit different, but I mean, it's exciting. Like, I love the challenge. It takes time, but it's worth it.
How about fakes? I feel like we don't see a ton of those across the league in general. But are you guys ever advocating for more of that, of like wanting, I imagine it when special teams is your thing, that it's like you guys want to do all the fun things and as much as possible?
Not necessarily. I like winning.
Yeah.
so
only if we think it's going to actually help. That's fair.
If it thinks it'll help us win, then yeah, I'm all for it. But we spend time doing that every week. And you talking about going against Dallas this week, so I was just pulling up all his fakes, and he probably has over 40 from his time in the NFL. So
that's incredible.
So it was a very fun week
to prepare for all of that. Yeah, that's very true. And then I know also, just before we close, just wanted to talk to you a little bit about some of our DBs because of your time playing it, of Antoine getting re-signed this year, and then we bring Jordan back. We've even brought Mike Edwards back, and then just the challenges with all the injuries. But those three guys in particular, what they can bring and their skill sets, and if healthy, what this secondary could really look like.
I think the first thing is their versatility. Like those guys, you can mix and match them. And then when you throw in the young guys like Taki and like Izzy, like those guys, they can do a lot of different things. That's like impressive. And I was talking to somebody the other day about how like the safeties and the corners, their body types kind of changed since like when I was playing. Like the corners used to be like the quick guys and being able to do all that stuff. Now the corners are 6'2", 6'3", and the safeties are 5'9", 5'10". But I think it just speaks to their versatility. They can play press man-to-man, they can play off, they can play zone, they can play deep, they can play in the box, they can blitz. And so it'll be exciting once those guys all get healthy, get a chance to play, especially with the opportunities that Izzy and Merriweather and Takeev got a chance. So I'm excited.
Yeah, and I feel like this defense overall, it's just wild how everyone in the secondary, it feels like, has to be a Swiss Army knife. And even everywhere else, I'm looking at this game of, Kalijah's dropping in coverage. And also, like, it's just wild. And I think there's been even more of that because of how many different injuries that Bowles is having to dial up things from way deep in the playbook, potentially. How challenging is it as a player to look at Coach Bowles' defense, to be a member of his defense, of how much he asks, how many different things you have to do, and what that means?
I think first, to be successful in the league, you got to have versatile players. Like, we feel like, we got a lot of injuries, woe is me, but you look across the league, it's injuries all around. And with the 53-man roster, like, you got to have guys that can do more than one thing. Like, if you're only doing one thing, you better be elite at that one thing. So I think that's kind of a necessity, or you don't last, the team doesn't last at the end of the season. So I think that's one thing, once again, going back to the front office, and even the coaches, they help a little bit in the scouting process in the offseason. Just, this guy, he can be a starting nickel, but he can also be a backup safety and an emergency corner. So I think that process is huge. And then with Bowles, like, he's like a little evil genius in there. He's that math teacher you had in college where all the numbers are all over the wall and from the top to the bottom. So it's exciting defense to play in, and especially once you get a grasp of it. But I do think just that chemistry between players, like sometimes you'll know like if you play with a guy long enough, what he's about to do without him actually saying anything to you. So I think now we're getting later in the season, we're starting to see a little bit more of that.
Well, Keith, thank you so much for joining us on the show. We really appreciate it. Congrats on that big win this week, and good luck next week against Dallas.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
All right, that's going to do it for us on Buccaneers Total Access, brought to you by Advent Health. This is Buccaneers Radio.